The moment Anika realized the man she had just humiliated at her cousin's wedding reception was standing at the head of the conference room, she felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. It had started the night before. Her cousin Renee's wedding reception was held at the Astor Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago, the kind of venue where the chandeliers cost more than Anika's car, and the waitstaff moved like shadows. Anika had not wanted to come. She had a deposition to prepare, 2 briefs due before the end of the week, and absolutely no interest in spending 4 hours smiling at relatives who would spend the entire evening asking her when she planned to find a husband. But Renee had begged, and Anika had never been good at saying no to the people she loved. She was standing near the bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water, when she noticed her younger sister across the room. Lissa was 24, sweet-natured and easily flustered, and right now she looked uncomfortable in a way that made something tighten in Anika's chest. A man in a charcoal suit was leaning close to her, one hand resting on the wall beside her head, blocking her in with a posture so casually confident it made Anika's jaw clench. Lissa was laughing nervously, the way she did when she didn't know how to tell someone to back off. Anika set down her glass and crossed the room without thinking. She reached them in under 30 seconds. Without a word, she stepped directly between them and turned to face the man. He was tall, with a clean-cut jawline and dark eyes that registered surprise, before they settled into something unreadable. "She's done talking," Anika said. The man blinked. "Excuse me? My sister. She's done with this conversation." He opened his mouth to respond, but Anika had already taken Lissa's wrist and was pulling her away. As she turned, her elbow caught the glass he had been holding, sending its contents straight down the front of his shirt in a cold, dark waterfall of red wine. There was a sharp intake of breath from the people standing nearby. Anika looked at the spreading stain, then up at his face. She did not apologize. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," she said, and walked away. Lissa hissed at her from 3 feet away. "Anika, that's not what it looked like. He was just telling me about the open bar. He was crowding you. He was being friendly." "There's a difference," Anika said, not slowing down. She did not look back. If she had, she would have seen the man watching her go with a stunned expression that after a long moment shifted into something closer to amusement. Anika Reese was 31 years old and had been a corporate attorney at Whitmore and Hale in Chicago for the past 4 years. She was good at her job, precise, fast, and almost impossible to rattle. She had grown up watching her mother absorb years of unhappiness inside a marriage that had stripped her of most of her confidence, and she had made a quiet decision, somewhere around the age of 14, that she would never allow her life to be shaped by what someone else wanted her to be. She had kept that promise. She owned her apartment, she paid her own bills, and she had not been in a relationship serious enough to call a relationship in 3 years. Her colleagues called her driven. Her mother called her stubborn. Anika called it keeping things simple. She was at her desk by 7 the next morning, coffee in hand, when her supervisor Patrice stopped by and knocked on her open door. "They're announcing the new managing partner this morning," Patrice said. "All staff in the main conference room at 9. Anika nodded without looking up. Whitmore and Hale had been in transition for months after the previous managing partner retired. There had been speculation, internal memos, and the particular kind of hallway tension that only came with institutional change. Anika had stayed out of it. Whoever it was, she had cases to work. By 9 o'clock, the main conference room was full. Anika stood near the back with her coffee, half her attention still on the motion she had been drafting, when the side door opened and the firm's senior partners walked in, followed by a man she did not immediately see. Then the group shifted, and she did. He was wearing a different suit today, navy with a white shirt, but she recognized the jawline and the dark eyes before anything else. The wine stain from the night before was obviously gone. He looked composed, polished, and entirely at ease in front of a room full of people watching him, which was more than Anika could say for herself at that particular moment. "We are pleased to welcome our new managing partner," said Hugh Whitmore, Gideon Alcott. Applause filled the room. Anika stood very still. Gideon scanned the room as he acknowledged the welcome, and when his gaze reached her, it stopped. The corner of his mouth lifted by exactly 1 millimeter. It was not quite a smile. It was more like a note being filed away for later. Anika looked down at her coffee cup and thought very seriously about transferring to the firm's Denver office. She avoided him for 11 days. It was not difficult at first. Gideon was busy with onboarding, partner meetings, and the immediate business of learning the firm's caseload. Anika made sure to send her case updates through Patrice, arrived early to avoid the elevators at rush hour, and took her lunch at the small deli 2 blocks away, where none of the senior attorneys ever went. She was efficient about it in the way she was efficient about everything. On the 12th day, Patrice appeared at her door again. Mr. Alcott would like to see you in his office. Anika sat with this for a moment. Is there a particular reason? He said he's reviewing the high-priority caseload and wants us to meet with the leads directly. Patrice's expression was carefully neutral. You're on 3 of the flagged files. Anika gathered her folders and walked down the hall with the energy of a woman heading toward something mildly unpleasant but entirely survivable. She knocked. She was told to come in. She sat down across from him and placed her folders on the edge of his desk and focused on a point just past his left shoulder. I reviewed your work on the Harrington matter, Gideon said. He had a low, even voice, the kind that carried without effort. The motion you filed was well constructed. Thank you. The counter-argument in paragraph 7 could have been stronger. Anika looked at him directly for the first time since sitting down. I made a strategic choice to present that section conservatively. Overreaching on that point would have given opposing counsel something to anchor their response to. He considered this. Fair, he said. She blinked. Walk me through the Callaway filing, he said, opening the second folder. They worked through all 3 cases in 40 minutes. He asked sharp questions and listened to the answers without interrupting, which was not something Anika was accustomed to from senior partners. When they finished, she collected her folders and stood to leave. Ms. Reese, he said. She turned. For what it's worth, I wasn't crowding your sister. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Anika held his gaze. She mentioned afterward that she'd been trying to ask the nearest person about the signature cocktail, he continued. I happened to be the nearest person. The venue had the bar menu printed on cards tucked behind the flower arrangements, which she hadn't noticed. Anika said nothing for a moment. Then, she told me it was the open bar. Same thing. She could have walked away if she'd wanted to. She could have, Gideon agreed. He leaned back slightly. But you didn't know that. You saw something that concerned you and you acted on it. I'm not interested in making that a problem. Anika was not entirely sure how to respond to that, so she nodded once and left. She thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. Against her better instincts, she found herself replaying the conversation and then feeling annoyed at herself for replaying it. She had a deposition at 3, a call with outside counsel at 5, and no business spending any portion of her cognitive capacity on Gideon Alcott. She called Lissa that evening from her apartment. The man from the wedding, Anika said. Did you know who he was before that night? Lissa was quiet for a second. Kind of. Renee mentioned something about some finance guy being invited through her husband's work connections. Why? He's the new managing partner at my firm. A long pause. Oh, yes, Anika, I really was just asking about the cocktail. I know, you poured wine on him. My elbow poured wine on him. That is such a lawyer answer. Anika hung up shortly after and sat on her couch staring at the ceiling for a while. Her downstairs neighbor was playing something with a heavy bass line. Outside, Chicago traffic moved in its usual indifferent roar. She was fine. Everything was fine. She was not, she told herself firmly, interested in Gideon Alcott. Over the following weeks, the nature of her work made that firm resolution increasingly difficult to maintain. Gideon pulled her into 2 additional high-priority matters, citing her track record and her familiarity with the relevant case law. Their working relationship was direct and professional. He had a habit of stopping by the associate's wing in the late afternoon to check on case progress in person rather than by email, which everyone except Anika seemed to find refreshing. She found it disruptive in a way she couldn't entirely justify. What she could not deny was that he was good at his job. He had a way of cutting to the center of a problem quickly, asking the one question that reframed the entire situation, and he never dismissed an argument without engaging with it first. After 15 years of watching senior attorneys use that status as a substitute for sharpness, she found it unexpectedly disarming. She was working late on a Thursday when she finally admitted to herself that she had started to look forward to the afternoons when he came by. She stared at her monitor for a full minute after that thought arrived. Then she got up, went to the break room, poured herself a cup of coffee she did not need, and came back and worked for another 2 hours without thinking about it again. The firm's annual client appreciation dinner was held on a Friday evening in late October at a private dining room on the 42nd floor of a building that looked out over Lake Michigan. Anika wore a dress she had bought 2 years ago and rarely had occasion to use, dark green with a structured neckline. Patrice caught her in the elevator and raised her eyebrows in an approving way that Anika chose not to address. Halfway through the dinner, she found herself beside Gideon at the edge of the room. The city spread out beyond the glass in long amber lines. He was holding a glass of water, not wine, which she noticed. Is that a choice? She said. Or a precaution? He looked at the glass, then at her. After last time, possibly both. I don't usually do that, spill wine on people, or intervene on your sister's behalf. Either. Both. He was quiet for a moment. You mentioned your sister. Are you too close? She's the only person in my family who doesn't spend family dinners asking me why I'm not married. Reasonable basis for loyalty, he said. My mother has opinions about my life choices. Lissa thinks I'm just particular about who I spend my time with. She's right, but don't tell her I said so. He smiled at that, a real one, unhurried, and she felt something shift in the room in a way she did not entirely welcome. She looked out at the lake. What about you, she said. Family? My father is in Atlanta. We talk on Sundays. He asks me whether I'm working too much, and I tell him I'm not, and then we both pretend I'm not lying. Classic. It works for us, he said. They stood there for a while longer, not saying very much, and Anika noticed that the not saying much felt easy, in a way that conversations rarely did with people she hadn't known for years. That should have been a warning. She registered it as one and filed it next to the thought she'd had on Thursday, in the part of her mind she was pretending didn't exist. He walked her to the elevator at the end of the night. In the lobby, he flagged a car for her without making a production of it, and when she looked at him sideways, he simply said, "It's raining." It was in fact raining. Thank you, she said. Try not to elbow anyone tonight, he said. She got in the car before he could see her smile. Her colleague Brindle, full name Brindle Shaw, who had been at the firm 2 years longer than Anika and knew everything about everyone, found her the following Monday with the expression of a woman who had information. I heard you and Gideon Alcott had a nice long conversation at the client dinner. We were standing in the same general area, Anika said. For 40 minutes, Brindle said. I'm not interested, Anika said. That's what I said about my husband, Brindle said pleasantly, and went back to her desk. Anika spent the next week reminding herself of the reasons she did not complicate her professional life with personal attachments, the reasons she valued her independence, and the reason she had made a specific decision years ago to stop letting herself want things she couldn't plan for. The list was well established and she believed in it completely. Then one evening she was collecting files from the shared printer when Gideon came out of his office in his coat and nearly ran into her in the hallway. Still here? He said. The Harrington response is due Thursday. He nodded. They stood there in the corridor for a moment, both of them holding things, neither of them immediately moving. Have you eaten? He asked. She hadn't. She told him so. There's a place nearby, he said, if you want. She told herself she was saying yes because it was efficient. It was nearly 8 o'clock, and she needed food before she drove home. And the restaurant in question was half a block away, and it was a completely unremarkable thing to have dinner near one's office with a colleague. She knew she was lying to herself. She went anyway. Over dinner, she learned that he had worked at a firm in New York for 9 years before moving to Chicago, that he had one younger brother who played semi-professional basketball in Europe, that he had never been good at sitting still, but had learned how to make it look like he had. He learned that she had grown up in South Side, that she had gotten her law degree through sheer stubbornness and 2 part-time jobs, and that she could name every ingredient in any dish she ordered, but still managed to burn toast on a regular basis. They were outside after, walking with no particular urgency back toward the building when he stopped. I need to tell you something, he said. She looked at him. I asked Patrice to keep assigning you to my case reviews. The street was quiet. October air moved cold and clean between the buildings. She said the caseload naturally aligns with my experience, Anika said. It does, but I also asked. He held her gaze without apology. I wanted to keep working with you, and at a certain point I stopped telling myself it was purely professional. She looked at him for a long moment. The sensible part of her was assembling counter-arguments. The rest of her was already deciding. This is complicated, she said. I know. We work together. I know that too. I'm not easy to be around. I've noticed, he said. I don't mind. She turned and looked at the street. A cab went past. Somewhere above them a window lit up. Dinner again sometime, she said finally. We'll see how it goes. He didn't try to make it into more than it was. He just said, okay, and they walked back to the building, and she drove home with the heat on and the radio off, thinking that this was either going to be fine or a significant problem. It was, for a while, remarkably fine. 3 months in, she had introduced him to Lissa, who told Anika afterward that she liked him, and that the wine on the shirt had clearly not been a deal-breaker, so everything had worked out. Their mother found out via their aunt, as news in their family always traveled, and called Anika to ask whether this man was serious or just a phase. Anika told her mom she wasn't having that conversation and hung up on her twice before her mother gave up for the evening. Gideon met her mother at Easter. By the end of the dinner, her mother had already told 3 separate people that her daughter was dating a very successful attorney, and Anika sat across the table watching this happen, with the slightly surreal feeling of a woman whose carefully managed life was rearranging itself around her. Later in the car, Gideon glanced over at her. "She approved," he said. "She asked you about your retirement plan." Third question in. "I thought that was efficient." Anika looked out the window. "She never approves of anything. She thought my law degree was a phase." "Then I'll take it," he said. She looked at him. He was watching the road, easy and unhurried the way he always was, and she felt something settle in her chest that she did not have a precise name for, only that it had been there for a while now, and she had stopped trying to talk herself out of it. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said. "Of course," he said. She let the silence ride for a while. Then, "I'm not going to say you were right about any of this." "I know," he said. "I'm just acknowledging that it hasn't been a disaster." "High praise," he said. She allowed herself a small smile. Outside, Chicago moved past in its usual way, indifferent and enormous and familiar, the way home always was. Brindle was waiting for her outside her office the following Monday with a coffee and a knowing expression. "Well," she said. "Well, what?" Anika said. "Your mother's Easter table," Brindle said. "My aunt goes to the same church as your mother's neighbor." Anika took the coffee. "I hate this city." "You love this city," Brindle said cheerfully. "So things are good?" Anika thought about the car ride home. The settled feeling, the way he had said of course like there was nothing else it could have been. "Yeah," she said. "Things are good." She went into her office, closed the door and got back to work. For the first time in a long time, the things she was working toward and the life she was living felt like they were pointing in the same direction. She hadn't planned for that. She wasn't sure any amount of planning could have gotten her there. But she had learned, at 31, that the best arguments were sometimes the ones you hadn't anticipated, the ones that arrived from a direction you weren't watching, and changed the entire shape of what you thought you knew. She pulled up the Harrington file and started to write.